Hello, everyone, and welcome to Dream Leapers with Harriette Cole. Okay, I am excited. Are you? Have you been paying attention to what has been going on in our world? Have you? I'm calling this the moment for women, the year for women, the day for women, the time for women. It is so clear that women's empowerment is here. Those of us who are women have known it forever, but it's reaching a crescendo. And after the Democratic National Convention and all of the excitement and just the good fire that has been burning, I wanted to talk about what's going on, what it means for this to be a time for women and a time for potential. And the person who I knew would be amazing to talk about this with me is my dear friend, Paula Madison. Let me tell you who she is. Paula Williams Madison is chairman and CEO of Madison Media Management, LLC, and 88 Madison Media Works Inc. She is the acclaimed author and executive producer of Finding Samuel Lowe, China, Jamaica, Harlem. With more than 35 years in media, Paula's impressive career includes her roles as Executive Vice President for Diversity at NBC Universal, as well as leadership positions such as President and General Manager of NBC4 Los Angeles. Her journalism excellence was recognized with a Peabody Award for License to Kill and multiple Emmy, Golden Mike, and Edward R. Murrow Awards. Paula has been honored as one of the 75 most powerful African Americans in corporate America, and she received the Visionary Award from East West Players. A dual citizen of the United States and Jamaica, where my husband is from, Paula's impactful work continues to inspire so many. And today, we are excited to talk to her about one of her favorite topics, the power of women. And on the heels of the Democratic National Convention, the focus is on one of her dear friends, Democratic presidential candidate Kamala Harris. Please join me in welcoming Paula Williams Madison.
Good morning, Harriette.
Hi. I am just, it's like you can hardly sleep. We're so excited about this moment in history. It is, you have a daughter, I have a daughter. We have been, I will say for me, my daughter is just beginning her life as an adult, and she goes to school in a state that was one of the first when Roe v. Wade was reversed to take back all reproductive rights for women. This is a time that 5 seconds ago, we were so nervous that everything is going to be taken away. And now there's a lot of hope. There's a lot of a reminder of the power of women. I think we know, but it's been squashed a lot. So I want to start by just having a sense from you. You've worked in the media for a long time. You've paid attention to the political landscape, the social landscape for a long time. Why is this important for women, this moment in history?
Well, first of all, thank you so much for having me. I'd say over the past few days, I'm sleep deprived.
Yes.
Because not only am I watching the DNC, but then there's also the conversations of the pundits and the analysts afterwards that I also want to weigh in on. And then, not to mention social media and all the above. And I think right now, to your question, why this is so important a moment for women is because even with what we perceived to have been a greater parity, at least societally speaking, we know that the disparity exists still in executive roles. We know the disparity exists in the Fortune 500 C-suite roles. We know that the disparity exists in elective roles, right? Senate, not many. House of Representatives, more. But again, those tend to be somewhat seesawing out of balance. where do we find significant numbers of women? Usually in the educational system.
Mm.
That's usually where we end up. I suspect it's the nurturing, the DNA part of us that's teaching. But with all of that, we can name all of the women who've ever run for president in a major party. We can, on one hand, we can name on one hand the women who have been in the Senate. We can name on one hand the women who have challenged some of the chiefs of staff leadership roles in government. So where we are right now is, while in some categories we can be considered having made progress, there's a wide swath of categories where we've made little to no progress. And right now, seeing the image of Hillary Clinton at the DNC, knowing that in a couple of days we were going to see the image of Kamala Harris on stage at DNC, was uplifting for sure. But in no way can any one of us take for granted that we got there. Not yet. Because getting the feet to the ground, the souls to the polls, the people to cast their ballots, to fill in the blank, to pull the levers, all of that has to happen in order for this fulfillment of a promise that all men, and dare I say, women, are created equal.
Mm-hmm.
We do not yet realize that. So where we are right now, Kamala Harris, Commander-in-Chief, that should make us, our daughters and granddaughters, our mothers and grandmothers, our aunties, our cousins, all the above, buoyant with excitement. And the fact that just right there, just on November 5th, we actually can realize this promise, and it stopped being a dream, but it become reality.
I think about my daughter, and we've been talking about the election and what it's going to take for her generation to get out to vote, because many believe that it's going to be that constituency, those first-time voters or early voters who could make a difference. And one of the things that she said to me is many people in her age group are issue-oriented. They have one thing they care about. And if the candidate is not on point with them on whatever the issue is, they're like, well, I'm not going to vote because it doesn't matter anyway. Of course, that's just a few, hopefully that's not too many people, but we know in America, like, how is it that so few people vote? So what can we say? I listened to her tell me, she's debating with her friends. Well, you have to think more broadly. There are many issues. There's a need to understand how to work together with people and give and take and all those things that you learn over time. And I think because Carrie has old parents and she knows a whole bunch of folk who are intellectually stimulated to think about these things, she's thinking about it. But a lot of her peers are not. And a lot of people she looks at on TikTok and, the people who are talking are not necessarily thinking broadly. What can we say to them?
Well, I would say, Harriette, that their reality does not have them necessarily facing on a daily basis loss of life, inability to eat, stunted, if not completely shut off opportunities, right? We are looking at a generation where in some instances, if they aren't able to step out into the world and make their way yet, they can still be at home with their parents. When I look at, for example, the voting that happens in other places, I'll pick India, for example, the voting was happening over a period of weeks.
Yes.
Right? The government makes the opportunity to cast one's vote a part of an initiative, a decision to help people get there. We actually have laws being passed right now by some states that are limiting, challenging people's right to vote. This generation, in which I have so much hope, right? These young people, I don't disagree with Carrie at all in terms of the one issue. They care about a something. But often the something they're not caring about is, where am I going to get food? If I walk out on the street right now, am I going to walk into wartime gunfire? There may be gunfire, but it may not be wartime gunfire. Yeah. And so what we have are young people who have been not sent to Vietnam. Mm-hmm. They have not been standing on line for gasoline or food. So their own lifestyles have not been at risk.
That's a really good point. That's a powerful point, Paula, because, you know, I listen to parents and because for me, many of my friends have children who are older than my daughter, just based upon when we had children. So I've watched many of their children. And, you know, we talk about it with each other and sometimes behind each other's back. That child is spoiled. That child doesn't know how to work like we knew how to. That child, you know, well, those things, you know, right. Well, we give that child money and that child should have to work and earn, you know, all those things that certainly there's a segment of our population in the United States where people are struggling very, very hard.
For sure.
But however, your point, I think it's a middle class point. It's not even an upper middle class point. We provide more for our children today than likely our parents or grandparents did in previous generations. So that hunger is different. I think that's what you're getting at.
We took the hunger away from them. Mm-hmm. We promised ourselves that there was something really wrong in being hungry. So my child is never going to experience that. And what we've done, right? Not blame, but I will state it as fact. What many of us have done is we have removed from our children the ambition. We've given it to them. And so what we've said is, yeah, but I don't want you to have to work while you're in college. Well, what's wrong with working when you're in college? Well, yeah. I don't want you to have loans the way I did. Well, what's wrong with you having loans? It teaches you the rhythm and rigor of repayment, right? So now what we're staring at is, and so spoiled. Listen, let's back it up. Let's not do third person. Who spoiled so-and-so? Right? You got to take ownership of that.
That's right.
My daughter was born when I was 23 years old. So very different. I'm 72. I'll be 72 in about 24 hours. My daughter is 40.
That's right.
Thank you. My daughter's 49. My daughter is a forensic psychiatrist who runs the entire medical division at a psychiatric hospital in Los Angeles. And what does that mean? What I try to do is say to her, at some point, you have to get your hand out of my pocket.
Yes.
You have to. You got to get your hand out of my pocket, out of your dad's pocket. You've got to do it on your own. What I think is that this generation, right? The Gen Z, which is now transitioning into Generation Alpha. I can in no way say that I, who grew up on welfare in New York, that there are not people who are struggling. There are. But for many of us who survived the struggle, and who made it, we haven't taught our children the value of the struggle. So I only have one issue. I'm 19 years old. I'm 21 years old. I care about the environment. I care about what's happening in the Gaza. I care about policing. I care about clean water. They are single issues. But imagine the throwback to when I was a kid, right? What we cared about was Kent State. What we cared about was the draft and being sent to Vietnam, or making the choice that you're going to abscond to Canada. These were things that as young people were changing the trajectory of the rest of your life.
That's true.
And right now, I will say in this context, thank God and our ancestors that much of what these young people are fighting for is the better of other people.
True.
Right? They aren't saying if I don't do X, I'm going to starve or I'm going to die or I'm not going to. So their concern is for the world. Their concern is for civilization and societies. What are you elderly people leaving us? What have you done? Right. What are you leaving us? So there's a whole different conversation that until we can engage in that conversation and not say, well, but you're spoiled. No. How about this? We spoiled the water. We spoiled the air. We spoiled the environment. We actually spoiled the electoral system and the representation. By now, what we have let it devolve into is this party and that party can no longer cooperate. The bipartisanship, which used to have a person in this party cross the aisle and work with a person in this party, doesn't even exist.
Yeah, that's true. Let me jump in and remind folks, this is Dream Leapers with Harriette Cole. You know, here on Dream Leapers, we talk about how people are manifesting their dreams. What we're talking about right now in exploring the power of women, really at this moment, it's like, what can damage a dream? And how do we get past that? And this is so important. We are talking with Paula Madison, my dear friend. We are talking as we are excited about the future. And so, Paula.
Yes.
Because what we are talking about, it's subtle. It's subtle on some levels. And then on others, it's really blatant, like what you're addressing right now. Well, there are all these things that we did. And we, the elders, and then we like to point our finger at the young people because it's got to be their fault. In this case, it's got to be their responsibility to take things back and make the world better, as you pointed out, not just for them, but for the next generations to come. And we are seeing the impact of, remember Al Gore? How many years ago was it? Al Gore was like, y'all better pay attention to the environment. And people laughed at him and said, oh, he's an egghead. He's, whatever.
Doomsday sayer.
Doomsday sayer. And then here we are.
Here we are.
And we are seeing, I call Sag Harbor my happy place. And there's a beautiful small beach there. And I was talking to people who grew up there. So, this community was built in 1950, African-American summer community. And,
I have that counterpart on Martha's Vineyard.
You do, exactly. So I wonder if this is true there, Paula. What they were telling me, when they were little kids, there were jellyfish, there were clams, there were all of this sea creatures that lived there. And, they had their antidotes for the jellyfish and whatever it might be. There are hardly even birds there now. Yeah. What there are is a whole bunch of yachts that you could see. And what that is spilling off to is killing wildlife and all kinds of other things. I'm bringing this up because this is a community that would probably be called wealthy, just like the Martha's Vineyard community. Many times when we talk about the environment, they're talking about very poor communities where the runoff from what comes from farming, it goes into the poor communities. But this is everywhere. What's happening to our environment is not exclusive to poor neighborhoods. It's the whole world is being affected. And we are looking at our political construct to say, okay, who's going to do something about it? Which is interesting. I mean, we talk about a cause, that is it. It's a cause that many people haven't paid attention to. And if you open your eyes, you can see it happening right in front of your face.
So, let's go back to another continent called Africa. And let's talk about historically, through the generations, a reverence and an affinity for the land and nature and animals. right? And as development has happened, has occurred, it isn't so much that I would say we have taken what we need in order for us to live comfortably. Everyone is in search of luxury. Everyone, I shouldn't say everyone, but what's being held high is luxury and an entire over-the-top behavior, right? So that right now, when I talk about the continent of Africa and the stewards of the environment and nature and who we are, here's a wild example. There is in the United States an emphasis on wealth and independence. And I try to counter that every chance I can by saying, but we really come from people who lived multi-generationally. We come from people with the grandparents, the parents, the children, all living in the same abode or in the same village. And yet right now, we've taken our elders and we're putting them out and aside. And the children maybe see grandparents once, twice a year for holidays or not. We're going against our history, our culture, our nature. My dear friend, Vic Bullock, joined from a civil rights movement of the NAACP and Ben Jealous.
Mm-hmm.
They are now leading the Sierra Club. Ben Jealous, civil rights icon, leads the Sierra Club.
Right.
And Vic Bullock, my friend and business partner, works with them because if we don't have environment, we don't have humankind.
That's it.
And that's what I think is the conversation that these young people are trying to push into our faces. Harriette, my grandson Idris is going to be 18 in January. He can't vote this go round. I wish he'd been born just a few months earlier, but okay. Grandma, I don't think I want a driver's license yet, he said. What? Every teenager I have ever known, yes, I want my driver's license.
Right.
He said, the pandemic took away a lot of my teen life. And if I get a driver's license, it kind of means I'm an adult. And I don't really want to be that much of an adult yet. And it blew my mind. Sometimes it's imperative that we of my generation just listen. Just listen without countering. Yeah, but what about? Don't do that. Listen to what's important to them. What he was explaining was, whatever you all did to the environment and life, and COVID came along, all I know is that I was hunkered down and sequestered for almost 2 years, and I think I lost a part of my teenhood. And because of that, I don't know how to recapture it. But what I sure as hell am not going to let happen is that I get pushed into being an adult before I want to. And I thought, that is a way of thinking that I'm really proud of. That's probably a way of thinking that made me back in my teen years rebel, and I was going to be a Black Panther, and I was going to join the Nation of Islam, and I was going to Earth Day and all the above. I was going to rebel in some way. They do it differently. But here's the truth. Look at the National Geographic channels and all, and look at the deterioration of this planet. Watch the icebergs crumble into the sea, and how much of the encapsulated whatever viruses were in that frozen tundra and now is released into the air. And we're seeing, like, where'd that come from? Where'd that come from? Right. Well, right. It's we who have to stop. And when I say we, I'm going to say it's the women. It is the women who are the nurturers of nature and the planet. So now I'm going to swing back to how we started this. Mm-hmm. What does this mean? Where are we today as women, and what's our importance and influence? We manage differently. We're collaborative. We seek input. We're not afraid to get with other girls and other women and cry and let's talk it through. I'm not saying there's going to be a whole feminization of society, but I kind of hope there will be, right? I kind of hope there will be a different approach than, I'm going to hearken back to what our dear President Barack Obama said the other night on stage. He said that guy has an unusual fascination, distinction with crowd size. And we knew exactly what he was talking about. Women, we don't do that.
No.
We don't.
That's not part of our DNA.
It's not a part of our DNA. And because we are the birthers of these generations. It's up to us to say, let's look at this whole thing in totality. Let's figure out the best way to approach this. And I'm not saying that men don't do that. I'm saying that I believe in my 7 decades of roaming the planet, it's my belief that we have a different approach. You know, possibly we need a different approach right now.
I couldn't agree with you more. You know, I'm on the board of a charity that is headquartered in India. And one of the things that we do is to help women who have nothing and who work but weren't making a dollar, which is all over the world. You know that. We teach them how to make money. And there was someone, Westerner, worried, well, if this happens, will they run off with the money? Will they, you know, what are they going to do? And what are they going to do? And what they have done, you know, there's thousands of them now that we work with over the years. What they have done is improve the quality of life in their community, cleaned up the streets, gotten their husbands who were depressed off of alcohol addiction, you know, helped the children to get educated. Just, they didn't run away with the wealth that they were building. They stayed and fortified the community. And, you know, often it is said when there's a horrible crisis in the world, that's when a Black person gets a chance to be a leader. Okay, so now here we go.
So Harriette, we can reduce it to, so where did all these Black mayors of New York City, of U.S. cities come from?
Right.
What happened? Yeah, okay. Go ahead.
What happened? Oh, there's a crisis and we don't know how to fix it. Then suddenly we win elections. And then what happens though? And then change occurs because that sense of community, that even if it's that ancestral understanding of how to take care of each other kicks in. So here we are. There's a woman on the ballot. She is Black. She is Asian. She's like everything. Like what do you want? What do you need? Okay. And for those who can see this, Paula's shirt says, what's it say? What does it say, Paula?
Kamala Harris, for the people.
For the people. And that's what she said so many times. For the people. And what that means, you know, just that sense of what does it mean to be for the people. And historically, many people around the world are thinking about the people, the community, not themselves. That the community is essential to just literally the way you think about things. So I want to talk about Kamala, but first I want to remind folks this is Dream Leapers with Harriette Cole. We are talking to Paula Madison. We are talking about the future. We are talking about the power of women and what it means for women to lead. And, you know, I did a workshop, a conversation with Donna Karen a couple of days ago, and we talked about the power of women unleashed and, you know, kind of what that means. And so we're going to talk about Kamala, but I want to go from, I want to show a clip, but not yet. I want first, because Paula, you have known Kamala for many, many years. I remember being at your house on the Vineyard. This was probably middle of your relationship with her when she was running for Attorney General. And I should back up and say, I went to Howard. I was still in Washington, D.C. when Kamala started at Howard. I think I graduated, but I was still there. So I was on campus. I met Kamala at Howard. And I remember her as what all the people who talk about her from Howard, that she was a smart, focused, beautiful, driven woman. And she was a bright light. And that, that's what we continue to see. Smart as all get out and bright, a bright, bright light. When did you meet Kamala and how did that relationship begin?
Sure. Well, mine was because of a delay. I was fogged in at the Martha's Vineyard Airport, and my friend Chrisette Hudlin came in with her friend, and her friend turned out to be Kamala Harris. And I think Kamala was trying to get to Boston in order to catch a flight back to where she was going, and I was trying to get a flight to New York because I had a business meeting at 30 Rock the next day. And we ended up being fogged in for about 2 hours. And at the conclusion of those 2 hours, I said to her, she was mulling over running for statewide office in California. I lived in LA, and she was still up in the San Francisco Bay Area. And I said to her, do it. I said, do it. You have to run. I'll help you, and we can get this done. And I remember when I did get back eventually after my stay on the Vineyard and I went back to LA, I invited her to come to our NBC Universal campus and introduced her to the top leadership in the company. They were very impressed with her. And then we started to see people signing up and sponsoring fundraisers for her and so forth. So I've been on her team, fundraisers, et cetera, supporting her, having conversations with her since 2010. And a few times at my house here in LA and my house on Martha's Vineyard. And then I've had people all over the country, sponsor her, have fundraiser. And her sister Maya and she, one time, the house that they were renting on the Vineyard wasn't ready yet. And I needed them to be there in order to participate in the fundraiser I was having. So they stayed at my house with us. And so we got to, one of these days, I can put a sign in front of my house saying, the president slept here. I'm so excited.
That's one of those signs you want to be able to put.
Yeah, yeah. So as you know, and we're fellow Jamaicans. Her dad hails from Brownstown. My great grandmother hails from Brownstown. As do for example, Coral Brown Estate Winery. There's a bunch of us Jamaicans who are sort of in the background, and I call your husband my cousin George because, like me, we're Chinese Jamaicans. But I've known Kamala. I'm one of the people who she calls on the birthday and wishes me happy birthday. So, but Chrisette is how we came to know each other, and I know Chrisette through her husband Reggie Hudlin, who you saw, and her daughter Helena was on stage last night because Kamala's her godmom.
Love all of that. Now, because you've known her for so long, what is it about Kamala Harris that tells you that she is right to be the president of the United States at this time?
If you're fortunate enough to be in her presence, which you have been, and also maybe some of your audience here has been, but even if not, if you watched her in that huge convention hall, I will tell you that I think many of the people who were there and people watching felt that she was speaking directly to them. Mm-hmm. She's very smart. She's brilliant. She's committed and dedicated. She can, with laser focus, cut right through the crap, right? We saw that during the congressional hearings.
We did.
We've also, I personally have seen her express and demonstrate a real concern for people one-on-one. So what is it that I saw? I've been in rooms with some of the tippy-top, most influential and powerful people in this country, whether in the corporate life or in governmental life. And Kamala Harris is the person who can command those rooms. She is, without question, the commander-in-chief. And we're going to see that in a few months. What we will see also is that when we say Kamala Harris for the people, that's all. When we talk about that other guy, he plays to tribalism. He puts people into categories. And that category, which is in sync with his lineage, is who he's for. And everybody else, as you will have heard that he said, suckers, losers. He once made a statement, I love uneducated people. The uneducated are my people. And that doesn't have anything to do with book learning.
No.
Right? That has to do with uninformed. That has to do with you don't know, just listen to somebody else put something in your head. That's uneducated. And what I'd say to you is, Kamala is a person who not only is a nurturer and a teacher and a defender and a leader. These are all attributes that I believe have to be in place today to be the person to lead the most powerful nation on this planet. And that is the United States of America. And Kamala Harris is going to be president.
So, one of the things that I was impressed by, and I want to give Mignon more credit because she put the Democratic National Convention together, a brilliant Black woman who has been on the scene for a long time. I mean, it was so well produced. I thought just really having the right tone as you went through each iteration. One of the things that's been so difficult for people to do is to get past the negativity and past the manipulation of 45. And, it's like, how do you defeat a bully? And I work with a lot of people just in my personal work and helping with empowerment and how you stand in your power and find your voice. And people who have been bullied often feel broken. They often feel like they're losing their minds. How is it that I said this and you are saying I said that, or you're treating me in a way that is so unkind for no reason. You're talking about me and saying things that are untrue, but you say it so often people start to believe it. I mean, some of the things that bullies do have led people to suicide, have led people to have the worst possible experiences in life because someone with this power, it is charismatic, even though it's just dark. I watched that energy shift at the convention, and it felt like the first time that I've seen it shift, quite frankly, where that, this emphasis on joy and on unity and on community seemed to have more gravitas, more power than the negativity. What do we attribute that to? And how do we keep it? How do we keep that force field up as we move forward?
So a commonality that I share with Kamala is her mother is Indian, came here from another country. My mother is half Chinese, half African Jamaican, came here from another country. Her mother raised her and her sister Maya in a Black neighborhood. My mother raised me and my two older brothers in Harlem. Black neighborhood. Now, how on earth can we be intimidated by the likes of a bully? When your mother says to you, stop complaining, get it done, right? My mother said, the first time I brought home a report card in the 3rd grade that was not all A's, in my face said, I did not come to this country for you to get a B. A bully in my neighborhood who was 3 years older than me spit on me one day as I was walking home from school in my Catholic school uniform in Harlem. I was so upset. I used to be skinny as a rail. I cried. I went home, Mommy. And she said, what happened? And I told her. She said, well, what did you do? I said, I didn't do anything to him. I can't. And she said, when he spit on you, what did you do? That tone of voice was like, well, I came home. Right across the face.
Ooh.
Oh, yeah. I didn't often get subjected to corporal punishment, but she slapped some sense into my head and said, get out and don't you dare come back until you've beaten him.
Mm.
Guy was probably 20 pounds heavier than me and 3 years older. And behind my mother were my two older brothers, and they're going, go ahead. They go through our apartment. They climb down the fire escape, meet me out on the sidewalk. Come on. We go around the corner. That fool's still sitting on his stoop. My brother ran up to him and said, you spit on my sister? You spit on my sister? I didn't mean that. I was just playing. Well, you're going to stand here while she beats your... And I wailed on this dude until I was crying from exhaustion. And when I got back home, my brothers climbed back up the fire escape. Supposedly in this tiny little apartment, my mother didn't know that they'd gone. She knew it. She raised us to be a gang, to back each other up.
Right.
How do you deal with a bully? First of all, even if you don't have it within you to feel empowered, you have to have the backing to know you have power and exercise it. And we got your back. What my Jamaican father used to call backative. Backative, right? Kamala Harris, she said, and I quote, I know his type. End quote. Right? We've dealt with bullies. You don't know who you're messing with. Because I was never more afraid of anyone than of my mother in disappointing her.
Yes.
I did not come to this country for you to fill in the blank. That's what Kamala's mother was saying to her.
Yes.
So what do we have here? That man intimidates. He thinks because he's got gold-plated this and gold-line that everybody wants to be him. Nah, dude. No, there's a whole bunch of us. Why did he get driven out of New York? I'm a New York girl. Why did he get? Because
we know.
Take that somewhere else where people are going to be either impressed or frightened. But you know what? You can't perpetrate that on some people who don't. We don't tolerate bullies, right? And by the way, I taught my daughter and my grandson the same thing. When my daughter was in second grade, some boy used an N-word against another kid. My daughter had one of those little metal lunch boxes. I got called to school because Imani hit this little boy upside the head. He was in the fourth grade. She was in the second. Hit him upside the head with her luck because he can't say that word. I was like, and I said to the administrators of school, so why am I here? Why did you call me? Did you call his parents in? Like, is he suspended? Well, we just wanted to let you know that Imani, was violent. Yeah, but I think appropriately so.
So, Paula, I want to add to this because something that happened to me when I was little that I think reflects on this whole thing. People were teasing me about my name. So when I was in elementary school, I was tall, skinny, glasses, pigtails, the most awkward right. You and I have a lot of things where we were similar, right? And there was a commercial that had the name Harriette in it, and they were teasing me, chanting this as I was mounting the steps to school. And I remembered it when I got home, and I was upset. And my mother, who normally the biggest embrace ever, my mother has hazel eyes, her eye, light of love. And I tell her what happened, and she gave me the eye, not the one I expected. And she sat me down and she said, dry those tears. And let me tell you about your name. She said, first of all, you are named for your father, Harriette Cole. My father, tall, dark-skinned Black man. In 1954, he became the first Black state senator of Maryland. Later, he became the first Black judge on the Maryland Court of Appeals. He was a trailblazer in Baltimore. You're named for your father. But also, on my side of the family, you're named for your great-great-grandmother, Harriet Ann, spelled like you, and I was like, Ann, you put the Ann in there, and that's just as country as all get out. She said, yeah, you're named for her too. And we have her manumission papers, Paula.
Wow.
I think his great-great-grandmother, something
Wow.
like that, was free when her husband and children were about to be sold in Annapolis. She saved her money and walked from Calvert County, Maryland to Annapolis. That's about 40 miles on a dirt road to buy back her family. And my mother said, the next time somebody says something to you about your name, you better understand that your job in life is to live up to your name.
That's right.
And I'm adding this because when we are bullied, if we remember who we are and from where we come, then like the armor comes, the power comes, like my favorite cartoon when I was growing up was Almighty Isis. And she had a big ring and she Egyptian goddess, and she would hold her hand in the air and say Almighty Isis, and the powers of the universe would come into her ring. I have lots of Isis rings. And this is what we need to understand. And so I want to remind folks, this is Dream Leapers with Harriette Cole. We're talking to Paula Madison. Right now, I want us to, for those who can see, you're going to watch, everybody else, you're going to listen, a clip from Kamala Harris at the Democratic National Convention, and let's talk about it on the other side. Let's go.
So fellow Americans, I love our country with all my heart. Everywhere I go, in everyone I meet, I see a nation that is ready to move forward, ready for the next step in the incredible journey that is America. I see an America where we hold fast to the fearless belief that built our nation and inspired the world, that here, in this country, anything is possible, that nothing is out of reach. An America where we care for one another, look out for one another, and recognize that we have so much more in common than what separates us. That none of us has to fail for all of us to succeed. And that in unity there is strength. Our opponents in this race are out there every day denigrating America, talking about how terrible everything is. Well, my mother had another lesson she used to teach. Never let anyone tell you who you are. You show them who you are. America, let us show each other and the world who we are and what we stand for. Freedom, opportunity, compassion, dignity, fairness, and endless possibilities.
All right, Paula, we have like 1 minute left. What do you have to say?
That's my girl. That's my president.
Hey, guys. This has been a delight and honor. Thank you, Paula Madison. Thank you to all of you for tuning in. Hey, Dream Leapers, are you going to be a Dream Leaper? Vote. That's what it means. Until next time, have a great day and make it count.